Well, thank you very much. In this next 5-10 minutes, my task is to give you a preview of the program, but really I want to talk about today is our engagement as an audience. Even if you're a speaker, you're only going to be up here for 20 or 30 minutes. So we've tried to arrange a meeting where there will be classical talks talking about classical biochemical pathways, but we'll also be talking about social issues and political issues and economic issues. But we're not just going to be up here at the lecture. Actually, if we could combine a conference on metabesity, we would actually do it the Socratic way and make it a peripatetic meeting and move and walk around and go on a hike on the moors, and every hour maybe sit around and talk about aspects of metabesity. But we're in a ballroom as typical, and there's PowerPoints being shown. So how are we to handle a conference where we're not supposed to be sitting on our hindsight because that doesn't burn enough calories, even though we're engaging the brain? So one thing I want to stress is let's try to engage the brain and ask pointed questions. And I have a few guideposts in coming slides. But I just wanted to point out that in addition to common lectures, we're going to have panel discussions. In my session, we're going to have common lectures, but they'll be about uncommon subjects. In some cases, we have a lecture about loneliness and its impact on metabesity and cognitive function. We're going to have moderated discussions, sitting around on chairs, conversations, and at the end, a multi-log. So there's going to be a diversity of speaking arrangements. But again, I want the audience to engage and challenge. So here's some ideas I wanted to throw out. Next slide. So what is obesity? I mean, we have BMI, we have it all quantified, but over the years, because society is changing, back in the Baroque period, when infectious disease was driving us, a sign of great health was to be a bit plump, both in your 16-year-old bride, and we would talk about a 16-year-old bride in shocking terms, but you could give birth and you weren't going to live too long, so best to marry at 16 and best to be plump. I think everyone can hear me, right? So that's important. We also thought it was important for children to be plump. Come to modern art, and we have Giacometti. And I don't think Giacometti was idealizing what the human form should be. Maybe the fashion industry has taken Giacometti literally. Giacometti was probably trying to express other ideas. But I just wanted to juxtapose these figures to make people think about metabesity in a contextual way. Are we talking about metabesity in India, where infectious disease is still a big problem? And anyway, if you're living in a city, it's hard to move around, and you can get killed going for a jog in New Delhi. So you better arrange other ways to keep your weight under control if you're affluent. Cities, by the way, as complex as they are, and more people live in them, there are some striking things about patents, even factored in for population, that patents and creativity seem to flourish to a much greater extent in cities than they do in the countryside, for whatever reason that may be, but it may have to do with the scale of human interactions. And in proximity to a lot of people, creative ideas spring. So anyway, context is going to be important. But I always like to think of extremes in outcome. and some paradoxical results, because it's too easy to think of, well, metabolism gets dysfunctional, we have Warburg effects, and things get a little too acidic, and we get into glycolysis, and that's easy to talk about. But there are these stunning paradoxes. This is from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, Obesity and Cardiovascular Disease, the Hippocrates paradox. Sudden death is more common in those who are naturally fat than in the lean, but you go to a number of studies, and a higher BMI is associated with better overall survival in congestive heart failure, in stenting, and a variety of other cardiologic conditions. There's all sorts of confounds, there's all sorts of disputes, but the obesity paradox in congestive heart failure is with us, and we have to think about what are the protective effects of being obese. Not 6 standard deviations, but maybe 1.2 to 1.5 standard deviations above the mean. And here's another one that's pretty shocking. It comes from Taiwan. Again, to think about extremes of outcome. Obesity and overweight are associated with a lower risk of active TB. So this gets into the infectious disease issue. And it's probably true in different places in the world that having some fat attached to your bones and muscles may provide a benefit. So I'm not going to espouse these ideas too much. I'm mainly telling you as an audience, challenge the speakers wherever and whenever you can. Be tough on them. And when you make a comment, feel free to walk around and not get anchored to your chair. The room's small enough we can hear you. So those are the messages I wanted to give, and I'll turn it over to Zan, who seems to be heading up here.